Warning: these social media platforms may be hazardous to your health. Censorship kills. Pain coming. This has been a PSA by Breaking Spectre.
Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Spectre here. It is the 9th day of November. Glad you can join me here for the broadcast. Got a lot of ground to cover here this morning by way of some financials here. Going to get after it here momentarily, but we're going to talk a little bit about some Fed governors resigning, a little bit about what's going on with some natural gas, data security. Oh, a whole bevy of things. Farmers waiting on parts because of strikes, used car prices, and the like. So stick around. We'll be right back after this message.
Hey everybody, Spectre here. Want to tell you about my Teespring store that I just opened up with a handful of products in that for you guys, the listeners, the audience, those that are in chat on a day in, day out basis. Always appreciate your support, and I figured what the heck, we'll throw some merch out there for you guys. And so obviously with YouTube and Earth Shenanigans as of late, I'm going to be looking to expand to other platforms, and well, it all comes at a cost, so I figured what the heck. That being said, I got some t-shirts and that out here. You can see those in black, white, and gray. Spectre Does News. Got a water tumbler, 20 ounce there. Got a coffee mug you can get in black or white. And of course, we got the Let's Go Brandon #FJB shirt, which you can also find in black, white, or gray. Right now, you can find that all over at https specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. That's https://specters-storefront.creator-spring.com. Thank you for your support.
All right, right into it we go. Weather-wise here this morning, looking pretty good across the old US of A here. Radar shows we got a little bit of stuff cruising across the old Midwest here. Maybe, up around north, South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa way. May see some stuff there this afternoon, later on today. And of course, we got some stuff cruising across the old Northwest and that headed our way here. I guess looking at some temperatures and that here as well. Kind of see we got a little bit of a cold pocket in that's kind of come down through Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado way. Maybe that's going to be cycling across the U.S. here later part of the week, and perhaps I think some of the reports I'm seeing is we may actually see some snow showers here at my location. Aside from that, Terry and Sandra still hanging out on the water. Not sure where they're headed. I don't know if they're going to join here before long, but it looks like they're not going to make any landfall anytime soon. Looks like they're cruising away from Mexico and Central America at this point, so no worries there. All right, well, this morning, futures flat as the old dollar slide on speculation demo Dov Brainerd will replace Powell. As is for the second session in a row, S&P 500 futures reversed earlier losses and traded flat after falling as much as 0.3% earlier in the run-up to today's PPI report, the first of a couple of readings on inflation this week, as investors weighed the Federal Reserve's warning that stock prices are vulnerable to significant declines should investor risk sentiment deteriorate, progress on containing the virus disappoint, or the economic recovery stall. U.S. Treasury yields fall, and the dollar index slipped for a third consecutive day following a late Monday report that Joe Biden interviewed Uber Dove and Hillary Clinton fan Lael Brainerd for the central bank's top job, although prediction markets were not impressed. European stocks advanced for a ninth day, the longest streak since June, while Asian shares drifted. And of course, there's speculation that Jerome Powell is probably going to be on his way out. Of course, people like Elizabeth Warren are no fans of his. Already basically come out and said that, I'm not going to vote for you if you were to come up for a re-election. And so it looks like perhaps somebody like Lael Brainerd might be the next in line. Some more stats from Deutsche Bank's Jim Reed says there wasn't an awful lot of news flow for investors yesterday as they looked forward to tomorrow's U.S. CPI release, but the astonishing equity advance showed no signs of relenting just yet, with the S&P 500 up for an eighth consecutive session to another record high. For reference, that's the longest winning streak since April 2019, and if we get a ninth day in the green today, that would mark the longest run of consecutive gains since November 2004, back when George W. Bush had just beaten John Kerry to win a second term. That's also 17 out of 19 days up, which hasn't happened since December 1971. So at 7:15 a.m., S&P futures were up 1 point or 0.02% to 49.65. If, or rather when, the S&P closes green today, it will be up 9 consecutive sessions, the longest such streak since November 2004. Nasdaq futures rose another 33 and a quarter points, as if the Nasdaq index is up today, it will be 12 days in a row, a feat it last achieved in 2009, and which hasn't been topped since 1992. Interesting. So, flashing forward, GE stocks, we'll talk a little bit about them here in just a little bit. But some of the movers here pre market today, TripAdvisor shares fall as much as 7% in U.S. pre market trading, with analysts saying the company's third quarter results and outlook are a disappointment given the travel recovery being seen across the board. Cryptocurrency exposed stocks rise in the U.S. pre market trading on Tuesday, set to extend Monday's gains after the global crypto market hit the $3 trillion milestone. Roblox shares jump as much as 27% in U.S. pre-market trading after the video game platform firm's quarterly bookings topped estimates even after the easing of COVID restrictions. Naked Brand shares rise as much as 45% in U.S. pre-market trading after the company said it will acquire commercial EV technology company Centro Automotive in a stock-for-stock deal. Robinhood Market slides 3% in pre-market trading after it said personal information of millions of customers was compromised in a data breach last week, and that the culprit demanded a payment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in the broadcast as well. Arrival plunged 19% in extended trading after the electric vehicle maker says previous long-term forecasts from the merger with CIIG Special Purpose Acquisition Company should no longer be relied upon. Smile Direct Club slumps 21% in U.S. pre-market trading after its third quarter revenue and fourth quarter forecasts missed the lowest analyst estimates. Tyrion shares jumped 24% in post-market trading on Monday after third quarter revenue and gross margin topped analyst estimates. Five9 shares rose 8.8% in extended trading on Monday after the software company reported third quarter results that beat expectations. RealReal shares jump 5.5% on Monday, extended trading after the online marketplace reported third quarter revenue that beat expectations. Invitae shares tumbled 14% post-market after the genetics company cut its full-year revenue forecast. And 3D Systems fell 8.5% post-market after reporting third quarter results. A 3D printing firm narrowed its 2021 adjusted gross margin guidance to 41 to 43% from an earlier range of 40 to 44%. So looking down through here, we'll get down to the old market snapshot here. S&P 500 futures little change at 4693.50. Stocks Europe 600 up 0.1% to 484 and change. Nikkei down 0.8% 29,285.46. Shanghai Composite up 0.2% to 3507 even. Looks like, euro a little change at 1.1588. Brent futures up 0.7 to 83.99 a barrel. Gold spot up 0, I guess flat, at 18.24 and change per ounce. And U.S. dollar index little changed at 93.96. Some other news out of Bloomberg overnight. We get just weeks ago, Wall Street analysts and central bankers were quick to assure investors that a collapse by China Evergrande Group wouldn't be a Lehman moment. Regulators in Beijing said that the crisis would be contained. Now that a bond sell-off has spread to China's entire real estate sector and beyond, concern is growing about the potential risk to the global financial system. Also, the Federal Reserve warned that fragility in China's commercial real estate sector could spread to the U.S. if it deteriorates dramatically, as investor focus turns to China Evergrande Group's next bond payment deadlines. Japan ruling Liberal Democratic Party and coalition partner Komito agreed to give 50,000 yen in cash and 50,000 yen in coupons for every child 18 or younger, Kyodo reports, without attribution. Bojo is struggling to repress the UK backlash over his defense of a ruling party lawmaker who broke lobbying rules, as his government was openly accused of corruption in Parliament, and even typically friendly newspapers took aim at his ruling Conservative Party. Bitcoin jumped past 68,000 for the first time to a new all-time high, part of a wider recent rally in the cryptocurrency sector. The climb in cryptocurrencies overall has taken their combined value above $3 trillion. Bitcoin hit its October record following the launch of the first Bitcoin-linked exchange-traded fund for U.S. investors. Over to News Squawk, and still over in Asia, gold rally pauses as focus turns to upcoming inflation data. Indonesian bonds risk losing key support as outflows surge. Nissan raises profit outlook despite supply disruptions, and the Fed warns of woes spreading as deadline looms, pertaining to the Evergrande update. Back over to Europe. Unicredit to take $1.9 billion charge from Yapı Kredi sale. Russia's Gazprom says gas will flow into EU storage this month. European gas prices slide on some signs of higher Russian flows, and Polish key rate hikes past 1.5% may be needed, according to MPC's Sura. And over to the event calendar here on the day. 8:30 a.m. We got a few things lined up here. October PPI, ex-food, energy, trade, month-over-month, estimate of 0.3, prior was a 0.1. PPI ex-food, energy, trade, year-over-year, estimate of 6.2, prior was a 5.9. PPI ex-food and energy year-over-year estimate 6.8, prior was the same. PPI final demand year-over-year estimate at 8.6, prior was the same. October PPI ex-food and energy month-over-month estimate of 0.5%, prior was a 0.2. October PPI final demand month-over-month estimate of 0.6 versus a prior 0.5. As far as the central banks does, well, 7:50 a.m. Fed's Bullard takes part in virtual event. 9 a.m. Powell to speak at the joint Fed, ECB, and BOC Diversity Conference. 9 a.m. ECB's not Fed's Bullard on UBS panel. 11:35 a.m. today we get Fed's Daily speaks at NABE conference. And at 1:30, Fed's Kashkari takes part in moderated discussion. So there we have a quick look at what is shaking through the old markets here today. Of course, on the earnings here today, we got a couple pre-bell here. Palantir and BioNTech are a couple I'm keeping an eye on. Got a couple others like Coinbase and the crypto side of things coming up later today, and Win out of the old casino side coming up, and a whole bevy of others here throughout the week. So aside from that, Fed Governor Quarles resigns. Now, mind you, this is now the third governor here in the last, 2-3 months, except perhaps this one is more of along the lines of his term is actually up rather than, some corruption and shady dealings behind the scenes. Says, and another one bites the dust. Federal Reserve Governor Randall Quarles will step down from the central bank in the last week of December. Quarles joined the board in 2017. In October, the Fed announced that Fed Vice Chairman for Supervision Randall Quarles will be removed from his role as the main watchdog of Wall Street banks after his 4-year term officially expired. The Fed made the announcement in a statement that sought to answer key questions for banks and Dems about how the Trump appointee's era of oversight will end. As Bloomberg reports, his resignation answers a thorny question for the White House, too, which was forced to wonder how long the appointee of former President Donald Trump would stay on the board and slow down the leadership overhaul the admin is planning for the Fed. Technically, Quarles could have stayed in his governor term, and many of his Republican friends had asked him to hold into 2022. Says one can't help but get the feeling this is a cleaning house before Brainerd takes over from Powell, as Quarles has been criticized by Senator Elizabeth Warren for sanding down bank regulations during his tenure, and she has also said she would not support a second term for Powell. Brainerd is the only sitting governor on the board appointed by a Democrat who is seen as a contender for all three leadership positions. So this now leaves President Biden to fill 4 jobs at the old Fedster. Stefano Stanfill Capital says, so Biden now has 4 Fed posts to fill, and if you think they won't all be altered doves, you have no idea who's really running things here. And putting the $ GLD in there. Interesting. I'm not going to bother to read through the statement here, but bottom line, looks like he's on his way out. According to his letter here, says it has been a great privilege to work with my many colleagues on the board throughout the Federal Reserve System and among the global central banking and regulatory community, looking at during or around the last week of December. So, again, highlighting what I said at the onset here, Brainerd is apparently getting the old runway cleared for her, and we'll have to see how soon the sycophants in the White House and that start to appoint these folks. So aside from that, no extra gas booked. European gas prices surge after Putin punks freezing continent. Yep, it's my Russia. If they can't get them on, going after Trump and everything else, the narrative here, well, Russia must certainly be at fault for the gas deliveries in Europe. Says in late October, the market rejoiced and natural gas prices puked. Even as we warned, this was just the latest joke the Kremlin was playing at gullible Europe's expense. After news that Russian President Vladimir Putin had asked Gazprom to gradually raise volumes to Europe starting November 8th. So, fast forwarding to November 8th, in effect today, when not only is there no gas being shipped to Germany via Russia's Anchor Yamal pipeline as of today, and here we see, per the graphic, it's pretty well tanked out. Says, but there are no signs the continent will get any relief anytime soon, with Gazprom moments ago tightening the proverbial and literal squeeze on Europe's gas supply. Some headlines. Gazprom didn't book extra gas pipeline capacity for Tuesday. Gazprom opts against sending more gas to Europe via Ukraine. No pipe space booked to ship extra gas into Germany's Malnau. Today's squeeze follows a supply shock on Sunday when no extra capacity to send additional supplies to Europe was booked in auctions. That's a disappointment for traders who had been counting on Gazprom to follow Putin's orders to ease the continent's supply crunch. Oops. Well, natural gas prices have been more than tripled this year as Europe started the heating season with the lowest inventories in more than a decade. Russia had been keeping supplies capped, but traders were hoping for relief after Putin ordered Gazprom to send more gas to Europe from November 8th, when domestic storage sites were set to be full. Meanwhile, after peaking above 160 euros, then tumbling back to 60 euros, Dutch natural gas futures have resumed their steady climb again as the prospect of a freezing European winter once again gets all too real. Says if Russia does what Putin said they will do, then it will be a big relief, Frank Van Dorn, head of trading at Vattenfall, said in an interview at the Flame Gas Conference in Amsterdam last week. If there is no additional gas coming on Monday, we would see a significant price spike. Precisely, that spike is starting to emerge. Another sign that Europe won't see any relief on Monday is a result of a series of auctions for pipeline capacity. Gazprom didn't book any of the space offered at the Sudza and Sokranovka entry points on the border between Russia and Ukraine. No extra capacity was booked either for the Malnau station in Germany, which handles Russian gas through Belarus and Poland. And then, as noted above, on Monday, Gazprom once again opted against sending more gas to Europe via Ukraine. Says as Bloomberg notes, shipments through those routes have been far below capacity so far this month. To make matters worse, some Russian gas flowing from Germany eastward to Poland for the second time since last week, the reverse of the normal direction. So bottom line, they're not very happy with Putin. It's got to be all Putin's fault. So, grab the old popcorn, right? We'll have to see how that shakes out. Will Europe freeze to death this winter? We'll have to see. So, Robinhood in the news. Robinhood admits data security incident, 5 million users affected. But hey, everybody step right up and get your vaccine passport so that all of your data can be online. Nobody will ever hack any of your data, now will they? Or any breaches? Case in point. Robinhood has reported via the company's blog that the retail trading app suffered a data security incident on November 3rd after a customer support employee was socially engineered. In other words, they probably clicked an email from somebody from, where's our favorite countries in Africa that always like to send those, hey, I'm trying to move like $1 billion that was left to me, right? Yeah, the unauthorized party obtained a list of email addresses for approximately 5 million people and full names for a different group of approximately 2 million people. As a safety first company, we owe it to our customers to be transparent and act with integrity, said Robinhood Chief Security Officer Caleb Seema. Following a diligent review, putting the entire Robinhood community on notice of this incident now is the right thing to do. Well, of course it is. Hood shares slipped lower on the news. Yeah, they kind of fell off a cliff. Here's their statement. It says late in the evening of November 3rd, we experienced a data security incident. An unauthorized third party obtained access to a limited amount of personal information for a portion of our customers. Based on our investigation, the attack has been contained, and we believe that no social security numbers, bank account numbers, or debit card numbers were exposed, and that there has been no financial loss to any customers as a result of the incident. The unauthorized party socially engineered a customer support employee by phone and obtained access to certain customer support systems. At this time, we understand that the unauthorized party obtained a list of email addresses for approximately 5 million people and full names for a different group of approximately 2 million people. We also believe that for a more limited number of people, approximately 310 in total, additional personal information, including name, date of birth, and zip code, was exposed, with a subset of approximately 10 customers having more extensive account details revealed. We are in the process of making appropriate disclosures to affected people. So after we contained the intrusion, the unauthorized party demanded an extortion payment. We promptly informed law enforcement and are continuing to investigate the incident with the help of Mandiant, a leading outside security firm. As a safety first company, we owe it to our customers to be transparent and act with integrity, said Robinhood Chief Security Officer Caleb Seema. Following a diligent review, putting the entire Robinhood community on notice of this incident now is the right thing to do. It says if you are a customer looking for information on how to keep your account secure, please visit the Help Center, My Account, and log in Account Security. When in doubt, log in to view messages from Robinhood. We'll never include a link to access your account in a security alert. I find the timing rather interesting, especially given that just yesterday, wasn't it the DOJ stepping out and saying, hey, we're going to crack down on some of these hackers and things of that nature? I don't know. And I wonder what the ransom was. Were they actually looking for cryptocurrency ransoms by chance? I don't know, just a thought. Just tend to find some of this stuff a little suspicious, but that's just me. So aside from that, MSNBC goes full clown tard, gaslights that inflation is a good thing, deletes tweet after angry backlash. And of course, as not just MSDNC, but I mean, dear God, we've had the Federal Reserve himself, Jerome Powell, basically step out and say it's all transitory. Well, what the hell does that mean? Do you think people who see the empty shelves paying more for milk, more for gas, more for used cars, and everything else under the sun, that's considered transitory? Malarkey. Says while millions of Americans are suffering from runaway, galloping inflation everywhere to avoid the dreaded H word that made Jack Dorsey every lib's enemy, number one from the gas pump to the grocery store aisle, which of course affects low income individuals the most, MSNBC has gone up to bat for the Biden administration, deploying their best pretzel logician to explain why all this inflation is literally, wait for it, good. First, the now deleted tweet. Why the inflation we're seeing now is a good thing. Opinion. What the media still gets wrong about inflation. Yeah. Never mind that in September, a Kroger executive warned in that grocery prices were about to get nasty, and the company will be passing along higher costs to the customer where it makes sense to do so. Or the Nestle CFO, Francois Xavier Roger, said blistering inflation would likely continue into next year, telling the crowd at a Barclays Consumer Staples Conference, if we talk of 2022, it is likely that input cost inflation will be higher next year than this year. Or that Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic admitted last month that inflation is not transitory and even has a swear jar collecting dollar bills for every time some gaslighter utters the word transitory. Boy, I wonder how many jars he's got full by now. or that agriculture inputs cost from fertilizer to feed have gone through the roof thanks to soaring natural gas prices, of all things, or labor shortages through the supply chain, including U.S. ports, and the trucking industry, including those who refuse to take the COVID 19 vaccine, or just read this from Bank of America. Meanwhile, on Main Street, cost of living rising, wages rising, food, coffee at 7-year high, wheat 13-year high, energy, Bank of America forecast $120 barrel of Brent next 6 months, shelter, U.S. rents up 9% year over year, wages annualizing 6% past 6 months, U.S. core CPI currently 4% year over year, likely to be 5 to 6% come spring of 2022. Nope. You see, the inflation we're seeing today is a good thing, according to MSNBC's James Surowiecki, whose financial background is a PhD in American history and being a writer at The Motley Fool and The New Yorker. The meme is incomplete. There won't be inflation. There is no inflation. Inflation is transitory. Inflation is good. Their rationale: people spent less and saved more during the pandemic, which means more disposable income, and the stock market, which most Americans still don't participate in, went apeshit. Even though millions of Americans lost their jobs, enhanced unemployment benefits and stimulus payments left many of them better off, not worse, and the stock market, after initially falling, boomed, which of course is just propaganda because, as Morgan Stanley explained so simply, even MSDNC columnists could understand. The bottom 80% of the population retained just a third of the $2 trillion in so-called excess savings. And without jobs, most have already burned through whatever money they had saved up. In other words, the bulk of government handouts ended up, you guessed it, in the hands of the ultra-rich who never needed it. So, facts be damned. MSNBC's propaganda continued. American consumers are, relatively speaking, flush, and it's that strong demand for goods and services that is sending prices higher. Sounds like old Red behind the podium during the old pressers, right? But, and totally couldn't be the primary reason, could it? It's taking manufacturers and food producers time to increase supply after cutting back production during the pandemic. And as a result, when you have high demand and relatively low supply, prices go up. The inflation we're seeing is not, then, some mysterious affliction that's descended on the economy. It's a predictable product of the economy's rapid recovery, and its costs have been offset to a large degree by robust wage growth and government policies. Yeah, right. Except, when adjusted for inflation, real weekly earnings are negative. Whoops. Now, don't look at the real numbers. Facts and data be damned. And it says, per Greg Price, we've come full circle on inflation. We get the Forbes headline: the inflation scare doesn't match reality. CNBC: inflation looks bad now, but it's pretty much sticking to the script. Out of the Washington Compost: opinion: Republicans are scaremongering about inflation to derail the Democratic agenda. And still out of the Washington Compost: opinion: don't rant about short-staffed stores and supply chain woes. Meanwhile, even the notorious optimistic Wall Street is starting to tell the truth, with Goldman warning that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Not surprisingly, after getting ratioed in a furious backlash, MSDNC did the only thing it could and deleted its tweet, as its latest attempt at mass gaslighting propaganda went terribly wrong. Yeah, at the end of the day, people are getting a little bit wise to the shenanigans of the propaganda channels, and we've had it. We're done. We can see the gaslighting for what it is. You know, they don't want you to believe what you see with your very own eyes. No. They want you to believe exactly what they tell you. Keep believing the BS coming through the tube. And that's exactly what it is: a load of BS. So, aside from that, we've talked about John Deere. The folks are still out on strike. Well, it's beginning to have an impact on the old farmers out there as well. Farmers wait weeks for John Deere parts as strikes paralyze Midwest factories. Multiple John Deere dealerships report part delays for tractors and heavy equipment amid an ongoing strike of more than 10,000 members of the UAW union at 12 of Deere's Midwest factories and facilities, according to Bloomberg. Dealerships note that customers face weeks-long delays for tractor and equipment parts that would typically take several days to fulfill. These parts and components are crucial for farmers to keep combine harvesters and other farm equipment humming during harvest season to stay ahead of the wintry season. Luckily, around here, it looks like I would say probably 95% of the beans and corn are already out. So, good on the farmers if they kept their equipment up and running. Deere's situation worsened this week when 90% of union workers rejected its offer that would have ended the walkout, which began in mid-October. Workers are encouraged to seek higher pay because of Deere's strong earnings. It seems general membership feels emboldened by this current political movement of labor power. They're pushing things further than the union leadership apparently wants to go. Victor Chen, a sociologist at Virginia Commonwealth University who studies labor, told CBS News. It's a gamble, but the economic wind is against their backs, given widespread supply chain problems and the current worker shortage. John Fisher, a wholesaler of tractors and other machinery in Columbia, South Carolina, said supply chain issues already complicated the picture for procuring parts. Now, strikes are a double whammy where parts are more expensive and harder to find. He said what used to take days now takes 3 or more weeks. According to Clown News Business, the strike has forced the tractor company to explore whether it can source parts from its 59 foreign factories to satisfy domestic demand, while striking continues with no end in sight. Deere is considered using replacement workers, or strike breakers, a ploy by companies to counteract strikes, but there are few workers in the labor market. Importing parts from its overseas factories could be the company's short-term solution to mitigate the disruptions that have forced some farmers to resort to the second-hand market for parts. The part disruption is problematic for farmers racing to finish corn and soybean harvesting ahead of the winter season. Part delays could begin to prevent fall fieldwork in preparation for spring plantings. And again, if I just use just my local area here in the Midwest as a gauge, I'd say it looks like we're pretty well ahead of the curve. We had a very favorable October. Um, excuse me, fairly warm, and we're still at a point now where a lot of the leaves and that on the trees and that have barely fallen and changed colors. So we've had a fairly nice fall to contend with. Seasonable weather. So outside of that, used car prices hit new record highs amid snarled supply chains. Anyone shopping for a used car has been sticker shocked by soaring prices since the virus pandemic began. There's a global shortage of semiconductor components, which has shuttered auto plants and crimped new car output. Lower inventories at dealerships forced many people onto secondary markets, the used car market, searching for the next best option, pushing prices to record highs. The Mannheim U.S. Used Vehicle Value Index jumped 9.2% month over month in October. This brought the index to 223.7, a new record high. From a year ago, the index is up a whopping 38.1% from a year ago. So there we see that on its rapid ascension. Some of the monthly increase is a result of the seasonal adjustment, as October typically sees above average vehicle depreciation and therefore used price declines, Mannheim wrote in the report. However, it added, this October was the first October in the history of the Mannheim Index data, which dates to 1997, to see a non-seasonally adjusted price increase in October. The non-adjusted prices increase in October was 5.4%. The used car market continues to march higher after the index stalled over the summer. Ford CFO John Lawler warned earlier this month that supply constraints could continue into 2022 and said, we'll be dealing with supply chain issues for a while. This means used car prices might rise even further through year end. Mannheim data reveals the lag between high-frequency data and traditional data at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We noted, after September's CPI print, that used cars will turn higher in coming months as Mannheim wholesale prices rebounded. Ahead of Wednesday's CPI print, we suspect the used car component of the index will rise due in part to Mannheim's latest data. As we've noted before, soaring prices have weighed on consumer sentiment. There are no immediate indications that would suggest used car prices have reached a peak. However, a top U.S. warehouse operator has just called the peak in the supply chain crisis. So we'll have to see. And I suppose if you go over to your local lots, what do you see on the lots? Do you see a lot of new cars, or do you see a lot of used cars probably getting trucked in and probably at some exorbitant prices? I don't know. So aside from that, GE soars after announcing plan to split into three separate companies. So yep, the old light bulb maker all the way up to jet engines is going to split up. Roughly 3.5 years after being booted from the Dow, GE announced Tuesday that it will split into three companies after years of activist shareholders pushing for structural changes as its stock has perennially lagged the market. The split will create three separate companies focused on aviation, healthcare, and energy. The healthcare unit should be separated by early 2023, while the separation of a company combining GE's renewable energy and GE power units is expected to be finished by 2024. What remains will be the GE aviation unit. News of the split has sent GE shares soaring roughly 20% in pre-market trade. Says spin-offs are hardly a new thing for GE, which has been shrinking since the financial crisis. The GE name will live on with the aviation unit, which will continue to be led by GE CEO Larry Culp. Originally, GE was founded in the late 1800s by Thomas Edison, had endured several transformations over the last century, changing alongside the constantly growing and shifting American economy. It was best known for being a leader at in-home appliances, jet engines, and power turbines. The conglomerate expanded rapidly back in the 1980s under the late former CEO Jack Welch, buying up NBC and getting into the financial services business with GE Capital. At several points in history, GE was the largest company in the U.S. by market value. Its last stint at the top occurred in the early 2000s. But a reckoning arrived with the financial crisis, which caused GE's troubled financial arm to hurt the rest of the company under then CEO Jeff Immelt. A decade later, GE was dumped from the Dow, despite being one of the blue chip index's original members. GE's debt issues and capital structure has led to skepticism from Wall Street. The company says it will use proceeds from the recent sale of its aviation financing unit to pay down this debt. Shares have been steadily climbing since the start of this year, but still, FactSet data shows shares have lost 2% annually since 2009, versus a 9% annual return for the S&P 500. So there you have it. GE apparently finally doing what activist shareholders wanted them to do probably several years ago, and it's taken them, 2, 3 years to finally see the light, I suppose. Interesting, considering they make light bulbs. And finally cut it into three pieces. All right, so aside from that, let's see here. Oops. That's the same article here. I thought I had an extra one here. That's all right. We'll pass over that one. So outside of some financial news, former Intel chief expects many more indictments in the Durham probe. So yes, obviously things seem to be heating up in that regard, and let's see what Durham produces here. Ratcliffe says documents he turned over to the special counsel show clear collusion between Hillary Clinton's campaign and Russians. That's out of Just the News here today. Says former Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe says he provided special counsel John Durham more than 1,000 documents that show, among other things, that HRC's campaign colluded with Russia to build the Steele dossier, and he expects many more indictments in the case. When I became the Director of National Intelligence, I said, listen, I want to see all of the intelligence about this supposed Russian collusion, Ratcliffe's Fox News host Maria Bartiromo on Sunday. Says what I found was, and as you're finding out, is there was, of course, no Russian collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. But what I did see in intelligence documents, some of which I have now declassified, that there was collusion involving the Clinton campaign and Russians to create a dossier. He added, While Ratcliffe declassified many documents exposing problems with the Christopher Steele's dossier and the FBI's handling of it, he said he provided a tranche of still classified evidence to Durham. I declassified the documents that we've talked about, but I gave John Durham over 1,000 other documents that have not yet been declassified, that I know, including intelligence that goes specifically to this criminal activity that would be the basis for further indictments, Ratcliffe explained. The effort to promote the Clinton campaign funded dossier after officials knew it was false goes to the highest levels of our government and government agencies involved, Ratcliffe said. I continue to think there will be many indictments based on the intelligence that I gave to John Durham and that I have seen, he added. So, bottom line, looks like things are starting to pick up. We'll have to see how this fares, and yeah, hopefully this does roll up some high-level players. Let's get it done. Tired of this business. Outside of that, January 6 protester seeks asylum in Belarus after being persecuted by the Biden regime. I saw a national file here yesterday. January 6 demonstrator Eric Newman has resurfaced on Belarusian TV explaining why he is seeking asylum there. So, Eric Newman, a protester during the January 6 Stop the Steal rally, is seeking asylum in the Eastern European Republic of Belarus as a consequence of him being persecuted by the U.S. government. Newman was introduced on the Belarusian media network Belarus One, which appeared to provide far more accurate coverage of the January 6 situation than the liberal-dominated U.S. mainstream media, or the propaganda networks. The network described Newman as a simple American who looked for justice and asked uncomfortable questions, but lost practically everything and is being persecuted by the U.S. government. Hundreds of January 6 protesters have been arrested and detained in abysmal conditions in Washington, D.C., following their participation in the demonstrations against Joe Biden's rigging of the 2020 elections. The presenter of the show noted how the increasingly violent anti-white environment in the United States had led people to take the difficult-to-imagine step of seeking asylum in a much poorer country. Says, judging by his story, Newman is the same type of simple American whose shops were burned by Black Lives Matter activists, the presenter added. Newman stressed his innocence during the interview with the Belarusian reporters, denying, wholly without merit, FBI claims that he attacked the police. He gave his perception of the events of January 6, suggesting a false flag incident may have taken place at the Capitol. When I was outside the Capitol, nobody came in through the windows. There were hundreds of people, and after a man broke a window and invited us in, told us to come in, nobody did it, he said. And that's how the government has been creating these situations since the 1990s, that they test on us and call it a terrorist event or something like that. The surveillance is awful, he said. This is political persecution. Following this, Newman fled by foot to Belarus, a neighboring country to Ukraine that has been at odds with Western globalists following an unsuccessful attempted Soros-backed color revolution there last year against national populist President Alexander Lukashenko. Following Lukashenko's victory in the 2020 elections in Belarus, U.S. deep state authorities and Soros-funded NGOs chose to instead recognize the losing candidate, liberal Svetlana Shekhanuskaya. There we go. Joe Biden and other leading globalists demanded that Lukashenko commit to a so-called peaceful transfer of power. Lukashenko refused the globalist edicts and remains in power today. According to Belarusian migration authorities, 3 U.S. citizens have applied for asylum in Belarus so far in 2021. It is unknown whether the other cases are linked to the events of January 6 or subsequent persecution of patriotic Trump supporters by the Biden administration. That's pretty crazy that at the end of the day we have to have various patriots and that who were probably goaded into going into the Capitol. And of course, plenty of videos that highlight the fact that police were actually holding the doors open, by the way. Obviously politically persecuted and now having to seek asylum at a lesser country. Pretty crazy. So outside of that, We get some other news here today out of Red State. It says breaking. It looks like Gavin Newsom's been located at an ostentatious Getty wedding. So, for all you folks now wondering where old Gavin's been since, about October 26th or 7th, whatever it is, they showed him taking a booster jab at the time. Been a lot of speculation, a lot of rumor on the old webosphere about, what did he suffer? Did he have some adverse reaction, or did he have Guillain-Barre, or what have you? I don't know. It's tough to say. But according to Red State here, it says, as our Jennifer O'Connell reported earlier today, California Governor Gavin Newsom hasn't been seen in public since October 27th, the day he received his COVID-19 vaccine booster. Newsom was scheduled to fly to Glasgow to attend the COP26 climate change conference 2 days later, but his trip was abruptly canceled. Initially, some speculated that perhaps he realized how silly it was to fly across the globe to speak at a climate change conference when he could simply participate virtually. Yeah, right, I'm sure that's what it is. This is him and 400 other jets that flew in, right? So then Newsom's office claimed he was attending to unspecified family issues, and his office wouldn't elaborate when asked by the press. By Sunday night, his wife posted a tweet shaming people who were asking where the state's chief executive was, calling them haters and telling them to get a life. On Monday, the California COP26 delegation refused to answer questions as to how Newsom was reportedly participating virtually or where he was. Late Monday, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounalakis claimed Newsom couldn't go to Scotland because he has young children.
It's unfortunate that he couldn't make it. The governor has a young family. I think it's really important.
Seems like this thing's hanging up for whatever reason. Bottom line, yeah, right, don't believe that crap. Kounalakis, who flew to Glasgow in Newsom's stead, said, "It's unfortunate that he couldn't make it. The governor has a young family. I think it's really important for everyone to understand that when you've got young kids, it's sometimes hard to come halfway around the world." Said nobody ever. He has a job to do regardless of the age of his children. Having young children didn't keep him from going to El Salvador in April 2019 to bash Donald Trump's immigration policies and study migration. Well, having a young family didn't keep him from another event, it seems, quietly behind in a Vogue story about Ivy Getty's weekend fantasy wedding, at which Nancy Pelosi officiated, was this paragraph. San Francisco's City Hall is designed to inspire awe, a symbol of the city's power and resilience after the devastating 1906 earthquake and fire. With its white marble detailing and soaring dome that looms more than 300 feet overhead, Hamish Bowles, Vogue contributing editor, notes. But despite the architectural magnificence and the panoply of state, with Nancy Pelosi officiating and Governor Newsom and Mayor Breed in attendance, the ceremony managed to feel extraordinarily intimate and personal, with Tobias's charm vows and his passionate kiss that dislodged Ivy's crown. Oh, sounds like a romance novel, doesn't it? Given that the prevailing social media rumor was that Newsom was suffering from a vaccine related injury and possibly in the hospital, this was quite the statement. Says out of Vogue magazine, an exclusive look inside Ivy Getty's wedding weekend, which began with a British invasion mod party at the Palace of Fine Arts. Says there was 99 photos included in the article, and a man who seems to be Gavin Newsom is in 2 of them. In one photo, he's standing next to a blonde woman who looks like his wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom. And perhaps some pictures there. Says, so, Twitter, is this Gavin Newsom? In the first pic, look to the right of the bride. To the couple in the second row, I think it is. Gavin and Jen next to London Breed. In the second pic, look behind the bride's dad. Bride is Ivy Getty. Says obviously this wouldn't explain where Newsom's been every other day since October 27th, but if he's seemingly healthy and was attending a family wedding this weekend, Ivy's grandfather is Newsom's longtime business partner, by the way, why wouldn't he just acknowledge that? It could be that even more than the French laundry dinner, which occurred exactly a year before his wedding, this ostentatious wedding, which took place in the city of San Francisco and at which hundreds of unmasked guests practiced absolutely zero social distancing, highlights Newsom's hypocrisy and complete disconnect with the suffering most people in California are enduring. Ivy Getty's wedding was a weekend-long event with multiple theme parties. At the first party, the bride wore no less than 3 outfits. So I'll break from that there. I've had enough of reading about that business. Absolutely ridiculous. Bottom line, perhaps Newsom is actually in the public light again. But again, as they state here, what about the other days? Did he suffer of some adverse reaction? It's tough to say. Is it possible they threw in a stunt double? Wouldn't be surprised if they did, but nonetheless, we can only speculate. So that is going to do it for the broadcast here this morning. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. And yeah, we'll see you back here tomorrow. Same time, same place, same bat channel. Take care. God bless everybody.